Episode 124 of the podcast. This week we're talking about how dogs with behavior problems can push us to the point of burnout and how they can add to the wear and tear on our bodies, and how well-behaved dogs are good for your career. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. Let's start off by talking about burnout. Have any of you guys been at the point of burnout yet? I've reached it a couple of times, been grooming for a long time, and I'm not going to lie, I've definitely been there. But I want you to think about the stress levels of our job and how much harder it is when it's dogs with behavior problems. Now, in my case, it was not only the dogs with behavior problems, but it was the stresses of dealing with the owners and with employers who weren't going to let me work on the behavior problem in the way that I really wanted to, the way that I am drawn to, and the way that I like to teach you guys. So when I looked at the behavior problems that we were having, the extra frustration of knowing that there's a way to work on it and not being allowed to just about drove me crazy. And it's actually why I ended up being my own boss. I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to go follow the dream and do house call and see what happens. Let's talk about some of these aspects. When we have a dog with a behavior problem, that's when animals get hurt, people get hurt, and equipment gets broken. Straight up, it's not good for your business, right? Dogs get hurt. That's pretty obvious. People get hurt. And we get hurt in a lot of different ways. But I want you to be thinking, too, that that's when equipment gets broken. Right? It's not the dogs who are hanging out and being like super still on your table that kick your shears off the table, or, well, ideally we're not having our shears on the table, but that kick into your clipper and like the blade ends up hitting the floor. It's behavior problems that cause so many of those kind of issues. It's behavior problems that add to our daily stress, more so than just dealing with an owner. Because let's think about it for a moment. Our customer expectations are based around what they want their dog to look like. And I think that's really important. Good, that's important. So we need to address that in such a way that we can talk to our owners and explain to them, because I don't know your pet yet, in the example of a pet we don't know, because I don't know your pet yet, this is the way I will proceed if your dog is having some issues, if your dog is getting scared, if your dog is getting overly wiggly, if your dog is frightened of anything. Then I'm going to slow down, and we're going to proceed in a way that helps your dog be comfortable with it. You might not have a perfectly groomed dog today, and we need to address it, because that's going to lower the stress level. So in many different episodes, I've talked about my safety policy. I'm pretty sure it's on episode 1, though, so if you want to go back and review it. It hasn't really changed all that much. And it's not a legally binding contract. What it is, it's a policy for us to have discussion points about, for owners to know this is the way I proceed. This is how I choose to keep the animals in my care safe. So when we talk to our owners about it, then we can change our owners' expectations. And that relieves a lot of stress on us. So that behavior problem, if it crops up, we've already discussed with them how we're going to handle it. Instead of being trapped in this idea that this dog is getting picked up in like half an hour and I didn't know that he won't let me dry his head, and now what are we going to do and how are we going to charge? We've already talked about it. What if his trim's ugly? We've already talked about it, So the stress level that comes with it, never mind the safety issue of this dog having a hard time. Now, I've talked about it many times before, but I know I pick up new listeners all the time, and I don't know if you guys start at the beginning or start with the latest episode, but I always want us to be in the mindset of this dog is having a hard time. This dog isn't giving us a hard time. This dog is having a hard time, and it is always worthwhile to try to help a dog be comfortable with it, because honestly, that's when dogs get hurt, people get hurt, and equipment gets broken, right? Very rarely is it the dog who is standing like a little angel on the grooming table that, ends up with slipping, or ends up, ripping a nail, or ends up biting somebody, or ends up ripping a grooming arm off of a table, right? Like all of those things, That's behavior problems. And we can avoid those because, as you now know, because you're on my podcast listening here, is that you now know we can teach dogs to be better. And we should be. And we should be. So we should be seeing this as part of our job instead of working at this burnout pace. So our customer expectations, we need to figure that out. And that's also going to be part of our tight schedules, which is another stress that we have in the grooming industry. And honestly, I think most other dog professionals don't really understand the time stress. But the way I try to describe it for people is, and I'm not a cook, so to me cooking is a big mystery, but it's like watching my mom try to figure out how to get everything for Thanksgiving on the table at about the same time, using one oven, a couple of crock pots, and a stovetop, right? Like you have to balance every little bit to get that meal all done at the same time. And in many ways, that's how I feel things go in the grooming setting. So this is some of the way that we can talk to our owners about it. Like if your dog takes longer than the time that we thought we were going to be needing, right? And if your dog takes a whole lot of extra time in the tub, all the other dogs are thrown off by that, right? So we need to know if your dog has an issue so that we can book accordingly. And not that we're trying to, shame you about your dog having an issue or your dog not being, perfectly good for grooming yet, just so that we can adapt and plan ahead. And also so that we can tell owners, we didn't know there was a problem. We would like to work on it with you, but I'm not going to try to cram 3 hours worth of work into a 2-hour time period. Right? So I need you to be thinking about our time constrictions, right? So if you are already talking to an owner about, we understand that your dog hasn't been here before, or maybe your dog has been here before, right? But if your dog is having trouble, this is the way we proceed. And this is how much time we have booked for you. So it's not like we're going to, be able to spend the entire day with someone next to your dog all day if your dog can't handle being in a crate, right? We don't have an extra staff person who's just going to sit down in a chair with your dog and just wait, right? So we need to be thinking about our schedules, but also explaining to owners that, well, you're going to need to come and pick him up right away because your dog can't handle being in a crate. Or you're going to need to be thinking about giving us extra time for crate drying because your dog isn't used to the blow dryer near a head yet. Be thinking about the time that it takes, the extra time that it takes to work around behavior problems. It takes extra time. We need to book extra time, or we need to charge accordingly for the time that we did spend, whether or not the trim looks pretty or the trim was finished. Let go of the idea that you're going to give them any sort of a discount if their dog couldn't handle it. And that one's a stress too. That can be such a stress for us. But he doesn't look perfect. And, they really wanted him to look really great, but the dog was fighting me the whole time and blah, 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 blah. And I hear these things and I see these things online, and these are huge sources of burnout. And this is the way that people get hurt. We as groomers get hurt trying to wrestle dogs into doing stuff that they're not comfortable doing. We get hurt, equipment gets broken, dogs get hurt. And let's face it, when dogs get hurt, owners freak out. And in this day and age, with mass media the way that it is, and social media the way that it is, right? No matter what that dog was doing, that dog could have just killed somebody on the floor. There will be people who are furious with your business because a dog got hurt. Doesn't matter what was happening. That dog could have been terribly, terribly dangerous. They won't care. They'll only see that a dog got hurt. So, circling back to safety, 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 and helping these dogs be good for grooming, helping them feel comfortable. Not trying to cram all that work, just push it down their throat, make them do it, right? Now, honestly, some jobs are going to try to get you to do that. And that's always been a stress for me. Working any place that was like, yeah, but he was being really good. Just finish it. And I'm like, I just made progress with this dog. I don't want to push him past that just to make it pretty, just to make it perfect, just to get that little tiny piece next to his lip. Like that's not me. And if you know, especially those of us who are, experienced with dogs who have problems and have worked a couple of them past it, once you have that experience, you're like, I want that for all of them, right? If I know I can make a difference in this dog's life and make this dog more comfortable for grooming, for me, for their vet, for their owners, and help them, that's what I'm going to try to do every single time. And so sometimes we start getting really burned out because the expectations from the owners or from management or your boss or a supervisor or someone who's always been like, just get it done, I could get it done, I've always been able to get it done, and they grab the dog's face and the dog is screaming and they're like, just continue snipping while he's screaming, he's not going to hurt you. It drives me crazy. And it's brought me to the point of burnout. And I suspect many others have been brought to the point of burnout too. But even if that's the way that you do it, even if you're still of the opinion that what's the harm? Just get it done. So he's screaming. Just grab him by the beard, hold him tight, get it scissored. Right? That's no way to live. You're stressing yourself out doing that. Right? It's going to get the dog hurt. It's going to get you hurt. It's going to break your equipment. So we need to be thinking about well-behaved dogs are good for our career, good for our stress level. They're better for us in general. But it's good business to have dogs be good for grooming. We'll go into that in the next part. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes, and tell all of your friends. We are much more likely to get hurt when we're working with dogs who are having a hard time being groomed. And that could be because you try to lift them up and they're squiggling around. That could be twisting and torquing. That could be actual, biting, scratching, lunging at you, tripping you and dragging you across the floor with their on leash. It could be a lot of different things. But in general, grooming is a workout. And even with dogs who are really, really good for grooming, we just work at weird angles. We're lifting living creatures, so a variety of weights. We're holding these tools and using these tools and these repetitive motions that we do. It's already a workout. Now, when we add a dog who's having a hard time to that already difficult workout, that's where we start having issues with our backs, our necks, our shoulders, your leg banged up because you got knocked over because you took a dog off a table and they dragged you to the front waiting room. I want you to be thinking about these injuries. So many of these are preventable, but they're part of what creates burnout. Right? That's why we're burnt out. That's why we're worn out. That's why we get upset at the end of the day. That's why at the end of the week, you're like, oh my God, why do I do this? If we have the time to teach them to be good for it, and if we talk to our customers about it and we charge accordingly, don't ever think that teaching a dog to be comfortable with it is going to be a waste of time or you're going to lose money on it, because you are going to charge for that time. Charge for your time. You are providing a service. And in the case of teaching a dog to be comfortable with grooming procedures, you're providing a very valuable service. If they do not wish to pay for your service, that is all right. They can go someplace else. And we need to let go of customers once in a while. And I know it sounds awful, but there are so many dogs out there. Do your due diligence. Talk to owners. Try to convince them that this is something worthwhile for them. And explain to them why, having a dog who's good for grooming is going to be easier for them to manage. It's going to be easier for you to groom. It's going to be easier for them to take care of, easier for the vet to take care of. It's going to be easier on their dog, But there are going to be some people who just don't want to buy in. Let them go. Because I want you to, and this is the dream. Okay, so if you are in a position right now where you can close your eyes for a moment and just take a deep breath and envision this, picture your grooming table, your grooming setup, your grooming tub, your whole grooming shop or a particular house call, whatever it is, and picture all of the dogs that you groom are dogs that you look forward to grooming. Oh, it's so awesome. I'm telling you, I've reached that point and there's nothing like it. Like, oh, I can't wait. I'm grooming so and so tomorrow morning, it's so awesome. And then the dogs that are wild cards, the dogs that you don't know or the dogs that you're still working on, you're still not getting stressed out about because you have a plan and you have owners who are on board and you're going to be paid for it. So you can let that go. And all of those dogs are working toward being dogs that you look forward to grooming. So again, picture your grooming space. Picture your table. Picture the dog that right now everybody has at least one dog that they're like, oh God, really? I have him on my book for Tuesday. Oh no, right? Picture that dog on your grooming table being totally relaxed with you and letting you do the best trim you can do. Because that's what I want for you. That's what I want for the dogs. That's the ideal. So when we start thinking about teaching dogs to be good for grooming, I also want you to think about the stress-free grooming life where you're booking dogs that you love grooming. And dogs, we're going to let you do whatever it is you want to do. And you're going to be able to do your best work, right? Even if it is trims that you normally wouldn't think are best work, right? I mean, we all have dogs that are like, oh, just take them down really, really short. But that short all over could still be very precise and look beautiful and velvety and lush, right? Even if it's a short all over. Right? And sending them home, and the owners are like, oh, he looks so cute, and the owners are happy and the dogs are happy and all of your stress disappears when we eliminate the behavior problems. So instead of trying to turn away behavior problems, if we're prepared and we say, you know what, we want to help this dog be comfortable with it. We want to help. Right? And maybe that's sending them to a trainer. Maybe that's sending them to their vet for, a physical exam to find out why this dog is acting different, right? Some of these aren't even behavior cases as much as they're dogs who are physically uncomfortable. Now, when you teach dogs to be comfortable with you, then later on when they are physically uncomfortable, it is so much easier to spot and they still are going to be appropriate with you. So let me give you an example of that. There was a dog this week who is usually really good for having around her head dried. And that day she wasn't. So I'm like, first thought is, if she's usually good for having her head dried, let's take a look at her head. What is going on? And she had one ear that was a little bit red and had gunk in it, right? We don't say the words that diagnose, but we say, time to go to the vet, right? This is what the normal ear looks like, and this is her right ear, and this right ear looks nice and normal and healthy. This left ear looks like this, which looks different than the healthy ear, right? Because not all behavior problems are because a dog doesn't like it, right? So a change in behavior could be physical. And then also, because this is a dog who has been taught to be comfortable with it, her response wasn't to try to rip anybody's face off. Her response wasn't to try to dive off the table. Her response to having a dryer near her ear was to be a little wiggly, right? How appropriate. It's not over the top. It's nothing that you can't handle, right? And with owners who understand that this is the way we proceed if the dog is having a hard time, they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to bring her to the vet. Let's take a look and see what that was, right? Because our owners are on it. So I want us all to think about behavior as avoiding so many of the stresses that cause burnout and cause us to be injured and wear out on our jobs. We don't need to. You don't need to. Grooming should be fun. Grooming should be fun. And we should be able to do our best work. Even if it's a short all over, right? We could do the best short all over. We can do a really pretty short all over. And I mean, the purpose of the podcast is about the training part where training meets grooming. But I gotta say, I've had so many of my own customers who were like, oh, I'm so glad you didn't shave her. I'm like, this is a shave down. Like, yeah, I took a two comb everywhere, all over. This is a short all over. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. But just because I took the time to make it very neat and plush and velvety and nice and even, they don't even perceive it as a shave down, right? Because their dog is good, I can do my best work. And not that I'm the best groomer in the world, because God knows I'm not, but I'm an adequate groomer, right? I think most of us are. We're like, yeah, I do really well with the stuff that I do. So when our dogs are really good, our stress level goes down, right? We are able to make our customers happy in most cases. I mean, there are always going to be customers who, want their Yorkie to look like a poodle or something, and it's going to be difficult to try to talk them out of it, We're always going to have some customer who wants something that isn't really easy for us to try to do. But we can help our owners be happy. We can help these dogs be happy, and we can lessen our workload by simply working on behavior and not pushing ourselves to the point that we can't handle it. So behavior is huge in preventing burnout. Huge. So we need to start taking it really seriously. Behavior is really important. If you'd like more information, you can find me at Chrissy@happycritters.net, happycrittersdogtraining.com, or you can join the Facebook group Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast or the Facebook page Creating Great Grooming Dogs. I really look forward to hearing from you.